Hi, I'm Dr. Mike Venezia here at the Addaday Recovery Lab and Treatment Center. Today we're going to talk about the art of the foam roll. So we're going to cover a little bit about myself, why we foam roll, when we foam roll, how do we use active therapy on the foam roller. We'll talk about vibration, we'll talk about size, shape, and densities of different foam rollers, and then also ultimately about making the right choice for you on the kind of foam roller that you should be using. So a little bit about myself. My name is Dr. Mike Venezia. I am the Chief Biomechanist for Addaday. Previously, I was on the medical staff where I consulted with the Los Angeles Dodgers, the Lakers, and the Kings. I was in private practice for 15 years where my specialties were pre- and post-surgical, sports injury, injury prevention, and chiropractic. So why do we foam roll? Well, we want to feel better. We want to reduce muscle and tissue adhesions. We want to move better. We want to increase blood flow, increase tissue length, relieve tension, and really important when we're warming up and we're cooling down. So when do we foam roll? Well, when we're warming up is best that we're getting blood flow to the area. We're stimulating neural connections to specific muscles you're about to use. Warming up is not about breaking down soft tissue, and this is really important. We want to make sure that when you're foam rolling to warm up, right, that we're using less pressure and we're really focusing on our motion. Foam rolling sessions should be a shorter duration, right? Because all we're trying to do is get blood flow to the area and get the nervous system to start to fire up a little bit. So really important that we don't lament in a certain area and that we're not trying to break down tissue, right? Breaking down tissue is going to be for when our recovery happens. So after we're done, right, we're cooling down and we're recovering, that's when we want to increase our pressure, we want to increase our time or our duration, right? And we want to really make sure that, again, we're also focusing on motion, we're pulling through tension. When we're talking about pulling through tension, that's basically active foam rolling, right? So it's really important that we understand that you don't necessarily have to be passive on a foam roller where you don't move. Your body craves motion, especially along its fascial lines. We're all athletes, right? And athletes are always in motion. Well, the body's craving that motion, especially when we're warming up and we're cooling down. We want to always be training the body to be in motion. So when you're foam rolling, we want to pull through tension. So we'll start at an origin or an insertion. And as you're rolling, we want to make sure that we flex and extend the joints through the tissues that are attached. That way we're getting full range of motion and we're getting all of those tissues to move together as we're going through our foam rolling. Important to also note that bones and joints do not like to be rolled on. So this is a really, really important part that we need to talk about. Bones are hard tissues. They're filled with nerves. They're filled with blood vessels. So it's important that if we're increasing the pain and ultimately the pressure on a joint or on a bone, it's going to trigger the muscle guarding response. And the muscle guarding response is your body's innate ability to flex against pain or basically protect itself. So joints as well are surrounded by bursa sacs, joint fluids, and as well as bones, right? Two bones will make a joint. So really important that we don't roll over joints and we don't roll over our bones because, again, we don't want to do tissue damage. We certainly don't want to do joint damage. And we don't want to elicit the muscle guarding reflex, right? Or the ability of your body to fight against the foam roll. And we'll see here with active foam rolling, right, that with our model, what she's doing is instead of putting all of the pressure on her neck, she can actually moderate the amount of pressure by just moving her neck back and forth. That way she's getting full range of motion, she's going through all of her tissues, and she's getting a full rolling effect. One of the biggest conversations that I have with my patients is when do we use vibration on our foam rollers? What we've found is that vibration has been found to decrease afferent nerve conduction. And afferent nerve conduction is essentially when the nerves that are coming from not your brain but are going to your brain are being disabled or they're being interfered with. So if you can consider, if we add vibration to a soft tissue experience, the brain will not perceive or interpret the pain that it's feeling. So normally if you lean hard against a foam roller, let's say, the natural reaction is to scream and to tense against the pressure, right? So if we can increase that vibration and we can decrease the amount of pain that you're feeling, then we can go deeper on the foam roller without eliciting that muscle guarding reflex or the pain and the tensing that go along with traditional foam rolling. Now, that all being said, and this is very important, if you're osteoporotic, if you're post-operative, if you have breaks or fractures, we want to make sure that you're not using vibration. In fact, it's also important to note here that if you have any condition, we always make sure that you consult your doctor first to make sure that you are a candidate to use a foam roller of any sort, especially one with vibration in it. Next comes the sizes, shapes, and densities of foam rollers. So foam rollers they come in every shape and size you can imagine, and there's no right roller for everyone, right? And there's not a right fit for everyone. So it's really important that we try out every foam roller possible and find out what works for you. Big or small, peanuts or balls, it's all about the look and the feel, right? So things you need to ask yourself, can you relax on your foam roller? Does it get into the area that you're targeting without affecting other bones and joints? So if you're a smaller frame, maybe you need to get something much smaller, like a small tennis ball or a lacrosse ball. If you're maybe a little bigger, you can use a softball, or you can use a larger foam roller, right? Every foam roller is different so that you can address different tissue. Density is also really important. And when we talk about density, we're talking about how dense or how tough, let's say, the tissue is, or how hard it holds up against pressure. So when we're looking at density, we want to make sure that as you're foam rolling, you're not tensing against the foam roller, right? We never want to elicit that screaming, oh my gosh, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts. Rather, we want to make sure that you're relaxing into the foam roller, and that as you're foam rolling, you're actually sustaining relief. You're not increasing the pain reflex, right? We don't want to increase the muscle guarding reflex, because that goes against the whole idea of foam rolling. This is also going to allow you to dig in deeper, right? So that the more pressure you're putting on, potentially, right, the more tissue work you're doing. With that being said, we're also going to talk about knobs and protrusions. So every foam roller has a variant of a knob or a protrusion, or sometimes it's just completely flat and there's no knobs or protrusions on them at all. The reason why we add knobs or the little bumps that are on a foam roller is to increase the surface area as you're foam rolling. So ultimately, you might as well go for as much surface area as possible, because in this regard, more is better. Now, that being said, we want to make sure that if you have knobs or protrusions or increased surface area, that you're not fighting or tensing against it. So if the knobs are sharp or they're too dense, we want to make sure that you're not fighting against those, right? The whole idea is always to make sure that you're relaxing on your foam roller and that you're pulling through tension the whole entire time. So ultimately, we always got to ask, well, what's right for you, right? Because again, there's no right size, there's no right density, there's no right shape, because everybody is different. So things you always want to consider. Can you relax on your foam roller? Does the foam roller fit you? Is it too dense? Is it too soft? Is it too big or is it too small? Or is it the right shape? It's okay to have more than one foam roller in your arsenal. Have the right tool for the right job. I can tell you that in our lab, we have well over, I'm going to say, 20 different kinds of foam rollers. So that way, when somebody comes in, we can make sure that we can fit that person with the right kind of foam roller that they need. When we're talking about vibration, again, it's all about comfort. We want to make sure that if you're using vibration, that it's working for you, not against you, right? Make sure that you decide what works for you. And whatever you choose, make sure that it's a habit. Soft tissue work should always be done as a part of, not just as your recovery. And make sure that it's part of your daily routine. Recovery is really important, and it's got to be something that you're doing over and over and over again. It can't be just after a workout, but it should just be done, let's say, before you go to bed or when you wake up. Just find a time, and that's going to be your recovery time. So if you guys have any questions, feel free. You can always contact me directly at drmike@addaday.com. That's drmike@addaday.com. I thank you guys so much for listening, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.